Hello and welcome to the Plumery and You. This is part of an ongoing series of deep dives into various aspects of the board game Kingdom Death Monster. My name is Fen, and today, rather belatedly, we're getting to the third of the quarry monster locations in the base game, and that's the Plumery from the wonderfully fun Phoenix, Adventures in Time and Bookkeeping. Actually, I've kind of come a little bit around on the Phoenix since encountering it in the Gambler's Chest. It's still a pain at times, and it doesn't engage me as much as many of the other monsters, but there are definite positives and there's gear I like. So I'm just going to remind myself once again that I like the Phoenix more than I think I do. I just don't appreciate the hoops it makes me jump through. So, we're going to start with our little look at the resources. The Phoenix has quite a wide range of different ones. It's got one over here, level 3 resource. It now has some indomitable resources in the Gambler's Chest, but they're not in the simulator, so they're for the future. And then here are our different resources. All of these ones along here, as far as the rainbow droppings, are a one-of in the deck. Little hard to get. This one in particular here with the Phoenix Whisker, very, very frustrating at times. As the Wishbone, we'll talk about that. We've got two Phoenix Fingers, two Pustules, and then all of these at the bottom are three ofs. So you've got a good idea how likely you are to get the various things. Some of the chase items for definite are the Wishbone and the Phoenix Whisker, the rainbow droppings and the Phoenix Finger, and then these feathers being the Phoenix's hide. Hide is always really useful and important. So the Phoenix is another one of the locations that had a Ferold rehaul in the Legendary card pack. This is its newest version and its bestest version yet. I am going to level a couple of critiques at some of the gear in here, but for the most part, I think that this is a huge improvement over where it used to be. And we're going to talk about what you can do with all the little bits of gear. Even the ones that I think could be better, all still have uses or interesting areas or situations where they are quite viable. So, we're going to start with a look at Phoenix armor itself. So let's get into the deck, shall we? Here we go. So, Phoenix armor as a whole, all pieces have the same armor points and keywords. So they all have 4 armor points for the location they're covering. They all have the armor and set keywords. They have feather, metal, and flammable. Of these, metal and flammable as properties do have some connotations in the first generation. Flammable in particular, don't take these against a Sunstalker unless you are very good at hiding from supernovas. Feather has also picked up a positive synergy in the Gambler's Chest, so these are all interesting keywords. Metal also interesting and viable in the core game in People of the Lantern because there is an outfit metal helmet, so you don't have to just have the Phoenix helm as your helmet. I discussed that in the end game video about People of the Lantern on the Exhausted Lantern Horde. I won't go into any further detail here. That video has all the details and the spoilers. So, the Phoenix is a time-orientated rainbow monster. And that really, it feels like it should be the definitions and the defining thesis of Phoenix armor, but Phoenix armor doesn't fully do that. Instead, it's kind of an insanity-based pseudo reach orientated armor set. We looked at one in the Dragon Armory, which is Dragon armor. I think in many ways you can think as the Phoenix armor as being an analog to the Dragon armor. It's more durable for sure because of the Plackart, which we'll talk about. But it still likes reach weapons. They're very, very viable and strong. Let's get into the individual bits and pieces though, shall we? So to start with, we have the Phoenix Helm. The Phoenix Helm costs hollow wing bone, 1 small feathers, and 1 bone. I'm reading from a list because I don't have these memorized because I think there was a few changes. I can't remember for sure. Between 1.5 and 1.6 changes. Anyway, it has a down facing blue, and if you're insane at the start of the showdown, you'll get a +1 evasion token as long as you have the puzzle blue connected and you have a green and a red. This is a kind of common theme to the Phoenix, is it likes you to have at least one of each affinity. Most of the Phoenix gear will lean into this. It's not as extreme as the Sunstalker. The Sunstalker is like, everything is all colours. This is more like, can I have a rainbow, please, to match my feathers? So that's that bit. It also has a slight Greco-Roman feel to the armour set, while also reflecting the Phoenix. I think in particular it's the helmet that sort of does this. Anyway, let's actually talk about what this does. An evasion token is roughly equivalent to +1 evasion. This obviously isn't quite as good because you need to be insane at the start of the showdown. If you've lost all your sanity on the way in, then this isn't going to trigger. Luckily, once you're in the showdown, if you are insane, that's at least 3 insanity, then you'll get the evasion token. There are some token synergies, some anti-token synergies. For example, your evasion token would be removed by a brain mint if you chowed down on that's from the Screaming Antelope, by the Screaming Brain. So that's just something to be aware of. This isn't as default powerful as Monster Grease, but this also isn't soluble. So there are some situations where it being consumable and soluble, Monster Grease that is, can be an issue. The Phoenix Helm doesn't care about that, it still gives you an evasion. Then we have the Phoenix Plackart. I've put this second because this is the most significant and important piece of the armour set. This is also used in another armour set as well, for a hybrid armour set. I'm really looking forward to talking about that in the future. It's in the Lion Knight. This is, again, you can see it linking into this idea of one of each affinity. So it has first of all, it costs 1 iron, 1 leather, 1 small feathers, and 1 bone. So we're seeing we need to be on our iron by the time we start going for the Phoenix. Then let's get into the affinities, which is an up facing blue, a right facing red, and a left facing green. If you connect all of those, then if you are insane, and this is an ongoing thing through, it's constantly checking every time this is triggered, you ignore the first hit each round and you suffer 1 brain damage instead. So this is like a super block that's constantly running as long as you've got enough insanity to pay for it. Now, this ability is amazing. Ignoring hits is fantastic, and for a while this was the premium tanking bit, so much so that you would find hybrid builds that used the Phoenix Plackart quite often with the silk boots in order to balance it all out and give you a constant supply of insanity to keep fueling the Plackart. The general combo often uses Plackart, silk boots, and then either the God Mask, Thrill Seeker, the fighting art from the Manhunter, or the Manhunter's Death Pact. All of those are ways of continuously generating survival, which you would then convert into insanity and keep this Plackart going. So this is an absolutely phenomenal piece of kit, but first of all, it's been kind of trumped and superseded by the Muffin hat. That's the Smog Singer hat, which is, in my opinion, probably better in most cases, and that's only a Node 2 monster. And also, the really big one is the Phoenix armor set's affinities are whack. They're just not good enough, as we will see as we move on. Next up, we have the Phoenix Gauntlet. No affinities, when you depart, +1 insanity. And then we have the Phoenix Faulds. When you depart, gain +1 insanity. So these are both the similar kind of thing. The Gauntlets cost 1 iron, 1 leather, 1 small feathers, and 1 bone. And the Faulds are 1 iron, 1 leather, 1 tail feathers, and 1 organ. If I didn't mention it, the Plackart is 1 iron, 1 leather, 1 tail feathers, and 1 hide. So we can see there's a lot of leaning into tail feathers, small feathers, leather, and organs to be able to build this stuff. These two are the same piece of gear on a different location. Now, because I know about it, I'm going to take a real quick moment just to add something extra in here in respect to the Gambler's Chest. Skip ahead a short distance to the Phoenix Greaves section if you don't want this spoiled. Okay, last chance. Right, so the gauntlets and the Faulds, well, gauntlets, I'll explain in a moment, both have an indomitable version which you can gain by defeating the level 3 Phoenix if you have the indomitable resources from the Gambler's Chest. This will upgrade the Phoenix Gauntlet to the Violet Phoenix Gauntlets. That's why I was getting my gauntlets and gauntlets mixed up, because not only does it become violet, but it also becomes pluralized. This has the bone keyword on it, and it adds some extra affinities, including a really useful right-facing green affinity that is super helpful for the armor set. I'm not going to go into the rest of the detail, but essentially it has outfit and it just replaces the gauntlets in the armor set, and it lets Phoenix armor move towards being like able to hang against node 4 monsters. The Faulds have the same thing. They gain a bone keyword, they become the Violet Phoenix Faulds, and they also are an outfit. They have a left facing green and a down facing blue. It's worth noting both of these pieces of gear lose the when you depart gain 1 insanity, and they instead have while you're insane ignore all hits to that given location. So Phoenix armor with the Gambler's Chest does absolute gangbusters. So a lot of my problems with the core game Phoenix armor set, the base game Phoenix armor set, are addressed if you're playing with the Gambler's Chest and you're going after these indomitable resources. Okay, so the last piece we have are the Phoenix Greaves. They cost an iron, a leather, 1 small feathers, and 1 organ. You might be seeing a pattern here with the crafting for almost every single piece of this gear. Iron, feathers, leather, something else. When they have a right facing red that's not super useful, but their ability is incredible. When you're insane, you gain +2 movement. So in any kind of grid-based movement, be it hexes, squares, or whatever, one of the more powerful things is how far you can move. The more you can move, the more things you can interact with in a turn, the better you can maneuver around things. You know, there's a reason that cavalry is great in older, battles, and armory, and etc. in modern warfare is so armor, I should say, is so significant as well, because mobility, being able to outmaneuver your opponents, is fantastic, and there's no exception here. But on top of that, this armor set gets a bit, it leans into this extra movement with its set bonus, which we're going to go across and take a look at now. As it's just above, we'll look at the layout and we'll look at the set bonus. But these Greaves are like the 3rd best piece of kit in the armor set. So here we have our Phoenix armor as we would run it in the core game. You can see now why there's problems and why I wanted to mention that the affinities are can be improved, because for an armor set that really wants all of these down here to be connected, it's just not helping do that at all. I do genuinely think that this red affinity on the Phoenix Greaves should be on the other side, because we've already seen way better armor sets elsewhere that lean into this. But it is what it is. On the whole, you need to consider this as being like it's kind of a 7-slot armor set, although you get some choice and utility in what you're putting in here. Often you'll find a weapon that can fill this spot, and there is, in the Plumery alone, a right-facing green that will attach onto the Plackart that's fairly decent. So the last thing to really dive into is this, the Phoenix armor set bonus. +1 armor to all hit locations, so 5s across the board. Nice, total of 25 armor points, not including any shields. That's strong. And this ability here, charge, you spend your knight and your lightning bolt to full move in a straight line, and at the end of the movement you activate a melee weapon and attack, and you add the number of spaces you moved to your strength for this attack. So we're going to go over to the board and take a quick look at that for the purposes of just discussing how good charge is, but you've probably seen this before if you've watched me talk about the Dragon Armory, so I'm just going to repeat it briefly for brevity's sake. So let's get over there. Look at that, through the magic of pausing the recording and then dropping everything down here, we've got ourselves a little showdown setup. I actually use the auto setup for this. This is a automatically set up level 3 Phoenix done through the automated functions here, which is very nice. Let's just get away from that. Right, so charge. You move in a straight line, full movement. So your base movement, assuming you're not insane, is like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Nice and easy, boom. That will give you +5 strength. When we're insane, however, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, there we go. Oops, 7, so that way, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This kind of distance would give us a full +7 strength, which is pretty fantastic. If we have, from the Spediculous expansion, the Harvestman fighting art, which gives an extra bonus 3 more movement, then we can actually go from this distance 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's our normal movement. Insane 1, 2, and then 1, 2, 3 for Harvestman, and boom, we get a massive bonus there of 10 + 10 strength. So charge is very powerful. One of the things that charge really loves though is you having reach, because same situation, if we zoom our way over to here, excuse the line, it's terrible, and we have a spear of reach 1, we can hit the monster. I've talked about this many times, but reach is phenomenal. Let's just show the spacing on it for, phenomenal for charging type things. Oh boy, we zoomed in there when I didn't mean to. Okay, so if we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then we got our little spear. I have completely messed this up really badly. Ignore that spot in the top right. Just drifted too far over, but we land here, and now we've got like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 spaces we can hit instead of the previous 3. We could also technically hit these 2, but we've run through them, so the monster probably isn't there. Anyway, so that's really good, and we have a perfectly viable spear to use in the Plumery. But I did want to mention that the Sunstalker actually has a reach 3 spear. So if you can imagine, that is now like hitting up to this kind of range. And while it doesn't have the best strength, when you're charging, it just doesn't matter. So, that's like a crazy reach on that kind of weapon. Like, it's huge. So that's most of charge, but there's one last thing I wanted to talk about, and that's the play pattern of charge. So let's not move the stupid giant distance, because this is getting really unwieldy. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There we are. We've charged in, we hit the monster with our +5 strength. Now, in the following turn, assuming the monster doesn't go anywhere, which it might not do, because hopefully we're in the way, we're wearing a Phoenix Plackart, Phoenix armor, we're going to draw its attention, so it's going to attack us, maybe, hopefully. So it'll stay where it is. What we do is, if that happens, we can 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 dash out, and then we can use our normal activation and our normal move to get back in and charge. So you can do this yo-yo kind of thing, or if you prefer, you can be like a pendulum, swinging from side to side, stopping in the middle each time to chop another piece off the Phoenix. So that's kind of the basics of how you run charge. We're going to leave this indomitable, scary, top-of-the-food chain monster to think about what it's done. You know what you did. And we'll go back to looking at the rest of the gear now. We've got past the armour. So, for a while at least, that's probably the last time I'll talk about the Harvestman and Reach, but I do think it's always worth remembering how important movement and how important having distance on your attacks can be in the sheer level of options and variety that you get to have. So, now let's talk about the feather shield. This costs 2 small feathers and immaculate droppings to craft. It has an upward facing blue affinity. It's a weapon, melee, shield, and, because it's made of feathers, it's flammable. It has block 1, and it has this classic rainbow, 1 of each, and it gives the ability of reducing any suffered brain damage by 1 to a minimum of 1. Its attack profile is 3 speed, 7+ accuracy, and 0 strength. So, for most survivors, this is worse than the round leather shield. Its attack profile's worse, it's only got block 1, it doesn't have any natural armor points. It will gain the extra armor points if you're a shield specialist, but that's kind of it. So what the feather shield is, and remember it costs 2 small feathers, which is something you need for your Phoenix armor. Well, what the feather shield does is, if you have an immortal survivor, this helps maintain their insanity. Immortal survivors spend insanity as a form of brain damage instead of taking normal damage, and the feather shield works for that. So feather shield's just something you want in your back pocket, and you can be like, oh, I've got this really good immortal survivor, and with the Phoenix you can have 1,000 insanity survivor if you defeat the legendary Phoenix. So, you know, it's perfectly possible. Having a feather shield can be really good for them because they don't care about armor points, they care about insanity, and this helps protect it. So it's a really interestingly created piece of the Phoenix suite. It's just not something you'll use all the time. Our next item is the Bloom Sphere. I really like the Bloom Sphere. So this is crafted with 1 small hand parasite. We've got 2 of those in the deck, and 3 bone. It's an item stinky other, so other stuff can't be used by saviors. It's got a left facing green and a right facing blue affinity, and if you connect both of those, you get, well, the Bloom Sphere actually does something. It doesn't do anything without that, apart from be stinky. So with the puzzle pieces connected, when you are picked as a target, you roll 1d10, and on a 6+, the monster must pick a new target if possible. So this is very powerful because the process for it is quite interesting. Because of the wording, if the monster targets you, say it's looking for closest threat in front facing, and that's you, and you roll the dice and you get that 6+. You roll a 6, great. The monster can't target you. So it resets back to its targeting steps, and it goes through each one looking for any other survivor that it can target. So let's say it's a white lion, basic attack, front, so that it would look in the front facing for nearest threat. If it doesn't find any of those, it'll look for closest survivor in range, if I remember correctly. And if it doesn't find that, it falls to its instinct. Now here, that's when it will target you, because it's gone through all its targets and it's got to its instinct and it's gone, I haven't found any other viable targets, now I'm coming at you. But, you know, the Bloom Sphere can let a damage dealing survivor sit next to the monster and be more confident that the monster's going to go after, say, the tank instead, because you have this extra bit of protection. It's also got 2 fairly solid affinities. Left green, right blue, pretty good. Right blue in particular, fantastic for a damage dealing type of survivor. So this is cheap, this is pretty good, and this is kind of a nice little piece of protection. Sure, it only works half the time, but it works constantly throughout the whole, every time you're targeted, you know, so half the time it works every time. Our next piece of gear is the Sonic Tomahawk. This is costs 1 small feathers, 1 iron, and 1 hollow wing bone. This is a weapon, melee, axe, and metal. It has a left-facing red. On a perfect hit, you make an additional attack roll, and if you have the red puzzle connected plus another red and a blue in your gear grid, you will gain Savage and Paired. This is one of the arguments for not changing the affinity on the Phoenix Greaves, because this connects to them. So, you know, my wishes don't have to be honoured. I kid. This is a redone weapon. In previous editions, this was bad, honestly. But the build now, this is a fantastic, perfectly designed, wonderful mid-game axe. This is absolutely, you can go progression from bone axe to counterweighted axe to sonic tomahawk to lantern glaive, and you've got an axe every step of the way through the base game, and that's really good. This is also interesting because as an axe, you're nearer axe mastery by the time you get this, and that becomes one of the points where savage becomes relevant, because normally savage is kind of bad devastating. Well, it always is bad devastating, but when you've got an axe master, they automatically wound persistent hit locations, and that synergizes with savage. So something that's not so great on the low level axes becomes better if the right kind of survivor's handling it. Finally, if people like rolling buckets of dice, if they're a speed demon player, you know, they want to hear the dice in their hands and they want to chuck them on the table and see all those pretty numbers spill everywhere, this is a great weapon to give to them. They can have it paired if they want and roll 6 dice, and they'll even get to make extra attack rolls. And really, as long as they're strong enough, the only negative is the trap, and that's the price you pay for rolling lots of dice. High risk, high reward. There's some fun builds you can do with Sonic Tomahawks, but typically you want another one of those beefcake survivors with a good base strength to really ensure that you are, every time you're hitting, you're wounding, and with the exception of the trap, and then a decent armor set to kind of just soak up the damage. I think this is a great weapon. I am so happy with the way they updated it. I think it is a unique design, and it's definitely one of my favourite weapons in the Plumery now. We have another updated weapon here with the Hollow Sword. This costs a Hollow Wing Bone, 2 Bone and 2 Hide. It has no affinities. This is a weapon melee sword dagger bone with frail. It also gains strength equal to the monster's damage attribute, so that's how many extra damage points it's got, which means it will scale a bit as you go against more and more dangerous monsters. It'll gain some more strength itself. It has 2 speed, 5+ accuracy and 5 strength. Now, I don't think this is a particularly good sword. There's definitely better swords, but I do think this is a fairly decent dagger. You do need to play around frail, so you'll have to get used to dealing with that. It's what it is. You might want to make sure you've got a bunch of hollow wing bones kicking around, and maybe even have more than one hollow sword in your gear grid if you're going to be just attacking with it. But there's also a bunch of safe ways you can get around frail. The usual ones are hit location scouting. We won't go into those in detail, but there's a fun thing you can do with a Dagger Master, which is Dagger Masters, as long as they're adjacent to the monster, they get to spend 1 survival, and they can draw a just resolved hit location from the discard pile and try and wound it themselves. So that way you can basically have a pseudo kind of surge single stab attack, which doesn't have to line up with super dense locations ever, if you're willing to just be patient and work this out. The really good place this works is if you have the Sunstalker in the campaign. The Sunstalker has an armor set called Cycloid Scale Armor. It's notoriously good, and one of the things it does is if you're in the blind spot, it gives your weapon sharp. So there is a really excellent playstyle where you park a survivor with a hollow sword, dagger mastery, and Cycloid Scale Armor in the blind spot of the monster, and just backstab it while other people are attacking it to increase the amount of damage dealt. It's a very safe way of using it. Now, there are definitely better daggers out there, for sure, but I do really like what they did with this one. Even if I don't want to use it as a sword, it's pretty good as a dagger. And I do have to note that even though I'm talking about using it as a dagger, if you had a sword master in your settlement, this then can benefit from sword specialization. And sword specialization is when you attack with a sword, after drawing hit locations, you can make a wound attempt and then select the hit location to resolve with that result. So it does have a little bit of extra edge case synergy, where you can use it as a dagger with a little bit of sword stuff, although that's less than ideal if you're dealing with a monster who has a lot of super dense locations. Essentially, same things as always with frail. learn what monsters punish Frail. For example, the Dung Beetle Knight that punishes it severely. The Crimson Crocodile punishes it quite severely. The Smog Singer's a bit less, but sometimes they can. And otherwise, just get used to the beats of being like, okay, the super dense location is in the discard pile. It's stabby time. So, interesting weapon. I have more to say about it these days than I did when it was in its previous version, where it was a kind of weak strength paired sword, if I remember correctly. Actually, for the sake of posterity, let's read what it used to do. Okay, I went off and I got a copy of my old hollow sword. So here we go. It is a weapon melee sword bone, frail paired. On a perfect hit, make one additional attack roll. Had 3 speed, 5+ accuracy and 3 strength. You can kind of see a little bit how that design moved across onto the Sonic Tomahawks to a certain degree. But this new version of the hollow sword is way better. It's still not generically going to cover you in all situations, but I think it definitely has a place in the game now, which is great. Next up, the Arc Bow. This costs a Phoenix Whisper and a Wishbone. Whisker, not Whisper. Whisker. Phoenix Whisker. Phoenix Whisker. Oof, I keep thinking of Phoenix right there. Anyway, it costs a Phoenix Whisker, a Wishbone, and a Scrap, and you have to manage that tongue twister to say it all. And it is a weapon ranged bow, two-handed. Left facing red affinity, right facing green affinity. It has 1 speed at slow, 6+ accuracy, a staggering 9 strength, and range of 6. It has cumbersome, like most bows, and it has a left facing red, a right facing green puzzle ability. So left green, right, left red, right green, plus blue. Connect them all up, and you get an extra 2 range, pushing this to range 8, which I think you should do. I've discussed before how great distance is in these various different experiences of playing on the Showdown board, and this is no exception. This bow is no slouch. It's always in the conversation for one of the best bows currently in the game. It's obviously your final destination in the base game because there's only 2 bows in the base game. But it's always nice to have. It's always good, and that range is incredible. So this is more of like a snipering style bow, whereas some of the other bows are maybe a bit closer ranged or medium ranged. This is your once per turn shoot, really take advantage of bow specialization for that reroll. It's great. It's difficult to make because you need those 2 one-offs resources, but it's absolutely worth it. Next to it we have the Hollowpoint Arrow. This is a hollow wing bone, a very common resource, plus a scrap. It is an item ammunition arrow. It's got 1 speed at slow, 6+ accuracy, 11 strength. It's ammunition for a bow, so it will borrow the range from the bow that you're using. And it has an on-hit ability of when you hit with it, the monster gains a -1 movement token. And this is limited to once per showdown in the way that arrows are. I discussed this arrow in combination with the shielded quiver from the Dragon King. So if you want to learn about what you can do with the shielded quiver and the Hollowpoint Arrow, you can watch that video. But it's worth noting that even -1 movement is huge because it can allow survivors to suddenly get away from a monster's attack by dashing. And if you ever play an all bow party because you wanted to, peppering the monster with a whole load of Hollowpoint arrows can really hinder its ability, because it turns out if monsters can't move around, they sort of end up sitting there doing their instinct, and many monster instincts are just not good enough. So this is amazing, and that 11 strength, that's exactly what this kind of level of arrow should be packing. It's a phenomenal arrow. I don't mind that it doesn't have any affinities because it is so very powerful. I just love it. Next up, we have another favourite of mine, but this is just one of those low-key weapons that I kind of really enjoy. This is the Finger of God. When I was younger, I used to visit my grandparents, and I used to watch really old 1980s or 1990s movies that were recorded on VHS. My grandparents had a VHS, and there was an advert. Now, this advert was for a chocolate bar in the UK. I'm kind of dancing around the name of it, but we'll get there. And the jingle stuck in my head forever, and it can't even leave my head, because when I picked up in 2009 a copy of Warhammer Quest, the original Warhammer Quest, this this jingle is referenced in that. So the jingle that they reference in Warhammer Quest goes, "A finger of doom is just enough to slay a Minotaur." The original lyrics are, "A finger of fudge is just enough." Ooh, I'm gonna have to look it up. Yeah, here we go. I remember the theme and I remember the Warhammer Quest one, but the original is, "A finger of fudge is just enough to give your kids a treat." So the thing that always plays in my head, and again I apologise for doing this, but, and I'm not going to do it in the future, I'm probably terrible at this, but I hear the jingle, "A finger of God is just enough to slay a Smog Singer," every time I look at this weapon. So, yeah. Now, maybe some people, some core memory, someone's like, "I remember that." Well, if you do, it's Cadbury's Fudge, Finger of Fudge, so, or Finger of Doom from Warhammer Quest. Anyway, I've gotten really far off track, so let's reset. This is the Finger of God. It costs a phoenix finger, I was going to say a finger of fudge, a phoenix finger and 4 bone, making it a fairly easy weapon to make. There's 2 phoenix fingers, that's not too bad, 4 generic bones, very affordable. It is a weapon melee spear, 2-handed with reach 2. You know how much I love spears, you know how much I love reach. This has got it all. It also has an upward facing red, and it has the ability that if you have a green, blue and a red in your gear grid, then as long as you have 5+ survival, this weapon gains +1 accuracy and +1 strength. So baseline, it's got a good stats of 2, 5+, 5. So acceptable speed, great accuracy, and the kind of strength that a Node 3 monster should be giving you for weapons you can craft by beating its level 1 version. And then it goes up to a 2, 6+6 when you have higher levels of survival, which is a nice bonus. I think this is a really good weapon. This is one of the ones I recommend using with the Phoenix armor, and it's nice that it's in the same crafting location, so all good. Let's get away from that disaster, shall we? Now we have the Feather Mantle. This is 2 tail feathers and a scrap, so kind of expensive because tail feathers you want for the armor set. It's an item and flammable. It's got a left facing blue, a right facing green, a down facing red. It exemplifies everything about the Phoenix's affinity layout right here. 1, 1 and 1, and it has the ability, when you suffer knockback, you may ignore collision with other survivors and reduce the movement you're knocked back, that's me in quotes there, by up to 3 spaces. So the main thing this is a bunch of good affinities. Left blue, great. Right green, amazing. Down red, really good. You're often looking for a down red for stuff like the counterweighted axe. But against certain monsters that employ knockback more and more, this becomes stronger. And as time passes and we have more monsters that turn up that inflict knockback for various benefits, this is going to reduce that danger a bit. I've watched the Black Knight fights on some of the YouTube videos. The one that Zachary Barash is running is the one that I quite vividly remember, and I feel provisionally that the Feather Mantle may be quite helpful in that fight, because the Black Knight is often trying to bounce people into rubber statues. It's a strange game, Kingdom Death, what can I say? And fire them off the edge of the board where they'll die. And the Feather Mantle may well be helpful there. So that's the kind of thing you should bear in mind, is does this monster like to do collision and knockback? then maybe this will be helpful. It's actually directly helpful against the Phoenix, because the Phoenix likes to knock people back at the end of its turn with its basic action. So it even has a direct application in the base game. I think this is just low-key a good item. You don't need it all the time, but if you want those affinities, it's doing something that occasionally is helpful and can be really good depending on the monster. So, perfect thing to have in your head of be like, ooh, a feather mantle will be helpful here. Now we got the bird bread. This is constructed with a pustules and 3 hide. It's an item consumable soluble. It has that delightful right facing green, which means it can sit next to the Phoenix Plackart and get it active. It has a consume ability, so activate and consume, which means it triggers any consume synergies, and if you have a broken jaw, you can't consume it. It's once per showdown, you get 1 armor to all hit locations, you gain the priority target token, and you have to roll a dice, and on a 1, you reduce your survival to 0. This is another set bonus in your pocket. You can run it in 2 different ways. The first one is you just pop it when you have a window and you accept that 10% of the time you're going to lose your survival, and you're okay with that. It's right to pop it and not worry about losing your survival, because 90% of the time you won't. However, if you're looking to ensure the downside, the 10% of the time that does happen, you'll delay this for as long as possible and only pop it at a point where the armor points are going to keep you alive, and losing the survival is not a massive deal breaker. I think this is a good item. I typically don't think I need more than 1 in a settlement, but it has become better with the advent of a philosophy that's based around consumption in the Gambler's Chest. So this item I like has become stronger, even if it is... I don't know what is in those pustules, but apparently it's better than it looks. So next we have the Hours Ring. This is an item other that is crafted with a shimmering halo, aka the Phoenix's cloaca, and 5 organ. This item has had a revision when it was turned from 1.31, the original first edition, into 1.5, and it had to have an emergency errata issued. So this is one of the errata that, like, it was officially given. So let's just talk about what it does, and then I'll add on the errata, and we'll briefly explain why it has it. It's a unique item, so you can only have 1 in the settlement storage. During the aftermath, if you died or ceased to exist, you may archive the Hours Ring and reset the campaign to the previous settlement phase's develop step before you departed. The errata was, the hotfix was, it has a limit of doing this once per campaign. So you're only ever going to craft 1 Hours Ring and use it, because any future Hours Rings are useless. They can't be used again. So this ability it's not great for the experience of playing Kingdom Death, because what essentially it's asking you to do is create a save state every time you're in the settlement phase before you depart with the Hours Ring. So you kind of have to back everything up, which you can do with phones or similar, but it's a lot of faff. And really, that means it depends on you how much bookkeeping extra you're happy with. Now for myself, I will craft an Hours Ring, but I will take it out only for like showdowns I'm not confident in, or ones that have a game over tied to them. So for example, fighting the core monster of a campaign, or the final monster of a campaign, core nemesis, final nemesis, like the Watcher or the Gold Smoke Knight from the base game. I'll take an Hours Ring out if I have one. I don't mind doing that. Or if it's the first time in a campaign, say I'm tackling a level 3 node 3 monster, I might consider bringing the Hours Ring along then, so I can learn or adjust, or be like, oh boy, no, I'm not ready for that. It's a little safety net. For other people, you may be perfectly happy to snapshot your settlement every single time you depart. Now, what's really neat is here in the KDM simulator, we've had the camera, I think, and I can't remember its name right now. I'm not going to go looking for the camera, but it allows you to take a photo of the table and create a save state. So KDM Simulator actually handles the hours ring better than doing it on the on paper, on table. Yeah, there we go. Now, the reason it got the hotfix of limit once per campaign isn't because of all the bookkeeping. It's because a member of the community whose name I cannot recall, and I couldn't find it. It's on Board Game Geek, I believe, but my search foo failed me. So if you do remember who it is, could you pop their name in the description so I can pin it to credit them? But they discovered that if you crafted the hours ring in the year before facing the final nemesis of the campaign, it would endlessly let you try again and again and again and again to defeat the final nemesis, and thereby take all of the risk and jeopardy out of the final showdown. Which, that was the moment where we got an agreement from Team Death, Adam and co, to hotfix the hours ring to a limit of once per campaign, which I really appreciated. I do understand the reason this ring was changed. We're going to talk about the old version again for posterity for a brief moment. I promise we're nearly done with this. We got some really fun stuff at the end to talk about. But let's just look at the old hours ring and explain why it changed, even though this new one is kind of a hot mess. Okay, so the original hours ring had unique and selfish. Selfish is an ability that means you can't have any of the selfish gear cards in your gear grid. It's not used very often, but it does crop up occasionally. And its ability was you do not gain any tokens for any reason, you do not gain hunt XP or weapon proficiency, and retired wearers can depart. Now this was changed because not gaining any tokens for any reason, it turns out, kind of messed with a bunch of things in the gambler's chest. We were told at the time, trust us, we're future proofing, and I was like, okay, that's fair enough. I wish you'd done a better new ring, but I understand. There's so many token-based things that are happening in the gambler's chest that the hours ring would just shut them off. So I understand the change, and now you know what the original hours ring was like. It would stop bleed tokens, it would stop positive tokens, negative tokens, anything. In the new stuff, it stops guilt tokens on the Smog Singers, and that's like a core mechanic for the Smog Singers. So it was definitely a change that needed to happen. I just wish that this new version of the hours ring was something else. I think it could do with another pass into something, but ultimately, if you do get the Shimmer and Halo, it's not too expensive to craft, and then chuck it in the use it for the big important core nemesis and final nemesis, just to give you a second try if you fail. I think it is balanced as it is. It's just messy to use. Alright, we have the Rainbow Katana. This costs the bird beak, the rainbow drop-ins, 1 iron and 6 bone. So that's 2 one-offs. The rainbow drop-ins and the bird beak are one-offs in the Phoenix deck, and it's a lot of iron, and it needs heat. It's a weapon melee katana, finesse 2-handed. It has frail. It has a left-facing red, and if you connect that red and you have a green and a blue in your gear grid, once again classic Phoenix theming, it'll gain deadly. It has 4 speed, 4+ accuracy, and 4 strength. Now, I'm not even going to bother talking about frail because we're going to go immediately on to the item that's next to it. Its partner in crime, the Blood Sheath. This costs 5 organ, 1 hollow wing bone, and 1 mucculent droppings. It's an item bone other. It has block 1, and when the Rainbow Katana is left of the Blood Sheath, as you can see right on the screen here now, like this, the Rainbow Katana loses frail and gains sharp. So, unless you're fighting white lions that don't have super dense locations at all, I don't think you should use the Rainbow Katana until you've got the Blood Sheath. Together, I think these are super fun. They're really enjoyable, and you can see how the original design idea was to have Rainbow Katana in a blood sheath and have the Phoenix Armor Survivor do that charge for that cool samurai dash cut movement that I believe has a whole proper name for it, but I'm not particularly familiar with Japanese martial arts. I only have a sort of anime-ish orientation understanding of some of the tropes, so I'm not going to go into it any further, but this I prefer to use with Screaming armor. That's my preference of what armor set to wear with this. But ultimately, Katana is a beloved weapon type. It's not one I particularly care about. It is actually a negative because you only get Katana mastery in the Sunstalker, and it's basically another version of the Twilight Sword, a bit better, but it does have the same cost when you complete it. So this is a fun weapon. It is really cool with the Blood Sheath, and it can hang around in the end game, and it does some sweet stuff. Absolutely. It's just Katana is not the best weapon type in the game, but if you don't care about maxing weapon proficiency, you can't go wrong with this. So I think it is I really like it. I think it's a lot of fun. Look at that, we're nearly there. It's the Crest Crown. This is the prestige item for killing the level 3 Phoenix. You'll get a Phoenix crest. You can just see out of focus down there. This costs the Phoenix crest plus 6 organ. It has an up and down facing blue, a left facing red, and a right facing green. If you connect all 3 of the affinities, the 2 blue and the red affinity, not the green, then when you depart you gain +1 insanity and +1 survival for each blue affinity you have. So at a base minimum, that's going to be +2 insanity and +2 survival, possibly more. And it has an ability that if you activate it while you're sane, it does nothing, which isn't the reason you'd activate it, but I think it's funny you can activate it and it doesn't do anything. But if you're insane when you activate it, you get to reshuffle the hit location deck. That's going to put the discard pile back in. That's a nice, more active, proactive form of hit location control. It's less action intensive than constantly scouting every single bit of the hit location deck. So I think the Crest Crown is absolutely amazing. It's worth the effort of getting. I am always going to be hunting a Phoenix for level 3 Phoenix for a Crest Crown if I need some form of hit location control, and I'm not interested in activating a Cat's Eye Circlet version every single turn. I will note the Crest Crown with the Wisdom Potion is a really sweet little combo. So this is an incredible item. Saviors can't wear it as it has the other keyword, which is absolutely fine. But otherwise, yeah, definitely worth hunting the level 3 Phoenix. And now with the Gambler's Chest, the level 3 Phoenix has become even more enticing to hunt multiple times. So it's very rewarding, and this is one of the best support items in the game. So that brings us to the end of this disaster. I mean, we're lucky that Old Man Phoenix didn't turn up. It's been many years since he's been around. If you're not sure what I'm referencing, it's a character that I accidentally fell into while we were talking about the Phoenix on the Great Game Hunters podcast. I am not going to repeat doing my Old Man Phoenix voice. I've already done enough cringe things in this video. So we'll spare you that. Let's summarize the Plumery and then send you off into the darkness. So, Phoenix Armor is a very good armor set. You are going to be making use of it as a bridge between leather and the end game lantern armor, and you're probably going to be using it in the base game at least one set for the whole campaign, possibly even 2. It's the, in my opinion, second best light, quote-unquote light armor, which are armor sets that don't have heavy keyword, along behind the dragon armor So those are like the durable hard ones, and in the same ballpark, but a different orientation compared to the cycled scale armor. So in other words, Phoenix armor is really good. If you've got Phoenix in the campaign, you're probably crafting at least one set of it. The Feather Shield is great for immortal survivors, kind of there for everyone else. The Bloom Sphere is great for close range survivors who want to assist passively with keeping the monster's focus on the tank. Sonic Tomahawk and Hollow Sword are both great examples of an axe and dagger respectively. The Arc Bow remains one of the top bows in the game, but it's probably falling outside the top 5 as we get more and more stuff. The Finger of God is a really fun mid-game spear and a great progression from King's Spear up to this and then onwards to the Lantern Glaive. The Feather Mantle is a great set of useful affinities with an ability that becomes more and more relevant the more knockback is a part of the monster pool you're fighting. Bird Bread is a wonderful thing to have on a tank to pull the attention from the monster once and get a pile of affinities. Pile of armor points, 5 armor points. Just to be aware that it has a 10% chance of removing your survival. It does have a good affinity to attach to the Phoenix Plackarts. You'll often see it paired with the Phoenix armor set. The Hours Ring is great to have as a back pocket kind of thing, but really it's down to you how you feel about using it and how much bookkeeping you want to deal with. The Crest Crown is absolutely amazing. The Hollowpoint Arrow is probably the best arrow in the game still. Debatable whether the Giggle Iron arrows are better, but the Hollowpoint Arrow is definitely the one that can break the game the most. And finally, a Rainbow Katana and a Blood Sheath is immense fun, and I absolutely love using it.